The observation deck hummed with the quiet energy of advanced alien technology. As Commander Lisa Morgan stood before the massive viewport, watching Earth spin below in blues and whites and greens that seemed impossibly vibrant against the darkness of space, and she wondered not for the first time if returning home after 3 years among the Venar would feel as strange as leaving had been. The Venar were a curious species, tall and elegant, with skin that shimmered between silver and pale violet, depending on their emotional state, and eyes that held depths Lisa had spent months learning to read. And now, as she prepared to depart their flagship, the weight of everything she had learned pressed against her chest like a physical thing. Kira approached from behind, moving with that distinctive grace that made Venar movement look almost like dancing. And Lisa turned to face her, trying to keep her expression neutral, even though she knew Kira could read the subtle shifts in her body language, far better than any human could. The alien woman stopped just close enough that Lisa could see the faint luminescence beneath her skin, pulsing in a rhythm that suggested deep emotion, and when she spoke, her voice carried that melodic quality that had taken Lisa weeks to stop finding distracting. Your ship is ready for departure, and all provisions have been loaded according to human specifications. Lisa nodded, feeling the knot in her stomach tighten, because this was it, the moment she had been preparing for and dreading in equal measure. And she opened her mouth to deliver the formal farewell she had practiced, but Kira raised one long-fingered hand to stop her. There is something I must tell you before you leave, and it concerns what happened between us during the navigation crisis. The memory flooded back sharp and immediate, and Lisa felt heat rise to her cheeks because she had tried so hard to push that night into the back of her mind, where it could not complicate things, but apparently they were going to talk about it after all. 3 weeks ago, a cascade failure in the main navigation systems had threatened to send the ship spiraling into a gravitational well, and Lisa had worked alongside Kira for 18 hours straight, making calculations and rerouting systems while the rest of the crew scrambled to prevent catastrophe. And when they finally succeeded, collapsing into chairs in the dim emergency lighting, Kira had leaned close and whispered something that sounded like, "Gratitude or maybe relief don't stop," she had said softly, her breath warm against Lisa's ear and her hand resting on Lisa's shoulder, with a pressure that felt significant. Lisa had frozen, uncertain what Kira meant, because the work was done. The crisis averted, and there was nothing left to continue. But then Kira had moved closer still, and Lisa had felt the flutter of panic mixed with something else. Something she did not want to examine too closely. And she had pulled away, stammering something about needing to file reports, and fled to her quarters, where she spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what had just happened. Now standing in the observation deck with departure minutes away, Kira looked at her with an expression that might have been amusement or sadness or some Venar emotion Lisa had not yet learned to identify. "I have studied your language extensively, but there are still nuances I struggle with. And that night I said something that I now realize you interpreted incorrectly." Lisa felt her heart rate spike, because this was somehow worse than the uncertainty, and she forced herself to meet Kira's gaze, even as every instinct screamed at her to look away. "What did you mean to say?" Kira tilted her head in that way that signified careful consideration among her people, and the shimmer beneath her skin shifted to a warmer tone that Lisa had come to associate with fondness. "In that moment after we saved the ship, I felt what you would call a bond forming between us, and in my language there is a phrase we use when we wish to preserve such connections across distance and time, and I attempted to translate it to your English, but I chose poorly." She stepped closer, and Lisa held her ground. Even though proximity to Kira always made her hyper-aware of every small movement, every breath, I meant to say that I hoped our connection would not stop, would not end, simply because you were returning to Earth, but you heard something different, something that frightened you, and for that I apologize. Lisa felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had been carrying for weeks without fully acknowledging it, and she let out a breath that was almost a laugh, because of course it was a translation error. Of course, the moment she had been replaying in her mind had been built on misunderstanding. "I thought you were asking for something I could not give." Kira's expression shifted again, and this time, Lisa recognized it as understanding, mixed with regret. "Among my people, physical intimacy is far less significant than the sharing of minds and experiences. and I did not realize until much later that humans view these things differently, and that my words and my closeness might have suggested intentions I did not possess. The relief Lisa felt was profound and immediate, and she realized how much emotional energy she had wasted worrying about this moment, about what it meant, and what she might owe or refuse, and now knowing it had all been a simple miscommunication. Made the weight of it seem almost absurd. I should have asked for clarification instead of running away. Kira made a gesture that was the Vinar equivalent of a shrug, one shoulder rising as her head tilted in the opposite direction. Fear of misunderstanding is common when cultures collide, and you responded with caution, which is not something to be ashamed of. They stood in silence for a moment, the soft hum of the ship filling the space between them, and Lisa felt the strange bittersweetness of endings that are also beginnings because she was leaving, but she was taking with her knowledge and experiences that would shape the rest of her life. Your people and mine are very different, but I have learned much from you, Lisa Morgan, and I hope that what I have taught you will serve you well in the years to come. Lisa smiled, feeling genuine warmth toward this being who had been her teacher and colleague and almost friend in ways that transcended the usual boundaries of such relationships. You taught me that assumptions are dangerous and that asking questions is always better than making guesses. And you taught me that connection does not require sameness, only curiosity and respect. Kira's skin flared briefly with that golden tone Lisa had learned meant joy or pride, and she extended her hand palm up in the Vinar gesture of blessing. Go well, human, and carry our knowledge with respect. Lisa placed her own hand above Kira's, not quite touching, because the Vinar did not shake hands the way humans did, but hovering close enough to acknowledge the bond between them. I will, and perhaps one day I will return with more of my people, so that we can continue building bridges between our worlds. The transport shuttle waited in the docking bay, small and efficient and thoroughly human in its design, and as Lisa settled into the pilot's seat, she looked back one last time at the massive Vinar ship that had been her home for 3 years, and she felt gratitude for the confusion and fear and growth that had come from being so far outside her comfort zone. As Earth grew larger in her viewport, she thought about that night after the crisis and about all the other moments of misunderstanding that had peppered her time among the Vinar, and she realized that the story she would tell when she returned would not be one of perfect harmony or easy friendship, but something more honest and more valuable. She would tell them that humans and aliens could work together, could save each other, could form bonds that mattered, but that it required patience and humility and the constant willingness to admit when you did not understand and to ask rather than assume. The communication channel crackled to life, and Mission Control welcomed her home with voices that sounded both familiar and strange after so long away. And Lisa Morgan, former commander of the Human Venner Joint Initiative, smiled to herself as she began her descent because she was bringing home something far more important than data or technology. She was bringing home the knowledge that difference was not something to fear, but something to explore, and that even when you got it wrong, especially when you got it wrong, there was always the chance to learn and grow and try again, and that was the most human thing of all.